yeah, let's move on to our top three, big three. Go for it.
Top three for me is absolutely Wendy. Since her whole introduction, she's just this like little frail, kind of helpless girl. She didn't really even know any offensive spells. She just knew healing and a couple buffs. And then you see just each arc, she really just kept taking strides forward. She has like personally, like if it came down to like every character in the series, you give it awards, I would put her at MVP. She's
that last arc
parts without her.
That last arc.
Yeah, like looking even at smaller ones, like Natsu's fight with Jackal. Natsu, even though he could, damage Jackal, they could land hits on each other. Natsu lost to Jackal the first time they fought because of just how Jackal's curse was. Natsu was only able to give up and fight him again, after figuring out how to counter, those explosions, because Wendy was there to help him. You look at like the whole fight with Faust, which was the first fight she ever had, which was alongside Natsu and Gajio, super impressive. And it wasn't even like, oh yeah, I'm gonna just be thrown out the same skill level you guys are. No, she figured out how she could, be an asset. She's doing buffs. She's, they won through teamwork with a whole using her roar to enhance Natsu's Fire Dragon Swordhorn. Her whole existence in the whole Sirius Island arc, and just like how much she's grown to support, then did the Grand Magic Games, how much she could stand on her own. And then just like when her Dragon Force dropped, that was such a sick part. Like she also really has any of her normal 1v1s are some of the I would say some of the better fights in the series. Her fight with Easel is definitely one of the more entertaining ones. Just because it was such a shock to see her get Dragon Force, and just to see this character who would introduce falling over, tripping on herself. She had absolutely zero combat ability, and here she is beating up one of the 9 demon gates and just unleashing the power of a dragon. And what was really cool is when those chapters were going out, because you said you were an anime guy until the last arc, but in those parts, in the Tartarus, they're actually split up, not only the chapter names, but also I can't remember, I think it's 6 parts, and each one of them had an overarching piece, and like the last one was called the Magna Carta, but there was a part when it opened and it didn't give, the next chapter, I think it was like 370 something, whatever the title, it was the one that led to it, it was like I think it was part 3, and it was named after Wendy. It was like Wrath of the Sky Dragon, and it was so intimidating just to see what exactly is that going to really pertain to, and then seeing where she's at, and like I said, like we mentioned earlier, you wouldn't have had the defeat against Aknologi without Wendy involved. Wendy absolutely is the MVP of the series, because you can have Natsu defeat some of these other characters. You can have a lot of these other fights really get involved in all these things, or in some cases, maybe if they weren't fighting like Faust or something, you could have Urza or Natsu, or Urza or Lucy or Gray or someone in Wendy's place. But especially the fight with Aknologi, there's not a single other character that could have replaced her in that scenario, unless you kind of Irene, but Irene was dead, so it's not like you can really actually counter. But just the start of her journey to where she's at now, how useful she is, how even though she's still this very young girl who at the end of the day she's just trying to keep up with all these super powerful characters. And there's a really, really interesting part. I won't go into detail that happened. Actually, it was only 2 chapters ago in 100 Years Quest. But Wendy was actually shaken up, and it wasn't she was crying, but it wasn't that she was losing in a fight she was in, but she was sad that she underestimated how strong she was, because she thought she had come up she thought she had moved so much further than she actually was. She thought she was stronger than she was, and she was upset that her growth wasn't as up to par with where she had really seen and wanted it to be, which just made her character so much so much more fleshed out. And really when you see a character like her, how much they've improved, and then you have them commenting on their own ability and why have I not gotten up to snuff where I want to be at with all these other characters that I've been trying to measure up with, Natsu, Gray, Urza and whatnot. And it just made her feel so much more real. And everything about like where she's been helpful in the series to her own fights. It's just been fun for me to see this character kind of grow up. Because like with Lucy, it was more about her skill and like her grasp on magic. Where Wendy, you're seeing her really kind of grow as a person, and, going through like stages of her life because she's still obviously really young, starting the series at like 13. Now she's around like 15 or something. And she'll be around 15, maybe almost 16. And even though she still looks a little bit bigger, but she's relatively, still this little kid who is constantly like looped into all these huge world like affecting events. And then, you see how much she's able to hold her own in that. But then, like, at the end of the day, all she wants to do is like go back and like eat cake with her, or exceed. It's just a delightful thing, kind of like it's a lot of like what I like about Urza, even though she's really powerful and how human she feels. But I think it's done a lot more with Wendy, because with Urza, it's more of like specifically with Jalal, whereas Wendy, anytime that she's not in a serious situation, you see her more as like this little kid. And then it's like, oh, serious time, and she's a very powerful character and very useful no matter what situation she's in.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see that. Wendy is definitely the MVP of the last arc. I think everyone who's seen or read the last arc would agree to that, considering what she literally does. Like, you're not beating Acnologia without Wendy. I think that's pretty
I
much
mean,
a
even in
fact.
like her first arc, no Wendy, would have one arm. She would have cut that arm clean off after she got bit by Cobra. Cubelios by usage of Cobra. I mean, like, look at that. Like, they wouldn't have been able to destroy one of the Lacrima. You wouldn't have had them beat Faust. You wouldn't have
Yeah,
had their fight properly against Hades. She definitely is a very useful and prominent character throughout the story.
yeah, I would agree to that. I mean, I personally, like, I just, it's always hard to have a good female character for one, and having a character that is so much younger than the rest of the cast is even more difficult. And I think they did well for Wendy. Like compared to the other characters, I just felt shined a little bit more. That's why I really never gave real thought to Wendy as a character. But yeah, a lot of the things you said are true. She's the best support cast, like fighting
Yeah.
wise, hands down. She's an MVP in a lot of the arcs, doing some of the most toughest missions, being the youngest member at the very same time. And from what you said, she wants to grow even more than she already is. And with that potential, like, she could surpass a lot of the people that are
Oh yeah.
currently some of the strongest characters right now. And
Yeah, Irene was even surprised at like how much like latent potential she had that she hadn't accessed yet.
yeah, so Wendy has a lot going on for her, and definitely see her in a new light. I think her personality is just not something I personally like are as drawn to, but her story is, like you said, very interesting and very well done.
And
Um,
I love her personality. Just how quickly she, you can switch between more of outside of serious situation, she's just this silly little kid. And she's very nervous, she's shy, and then it's like, oh yeah, the fight happens, and she's just, she's either being a really good support or she can be pretty vicious.
yeah, I mean, she is definitely one of the nicest characters for sure. I'm not saying I
Oh
don't
yeah,
like her. I just not like out of
oh yeah.
anime characters a personality trope I am drawn to. A person trope I'm definitely like okay with being someone like Wendy. She's a great person. Um, but yeah, Wendy, great character. My number three here is Jalal. Jalal, very similar to Loxus. Like you mentioned it before, he follows the same trope, and as well as Gajiel, in the sense that he was the villain. Then he turned good guy, and he helps out a lot. But in Jalal's case, he's not part of the main guild, and the way he goes about everything is so much more interesting in the sense that obviously the stuff with Urza, the situation he was in with the entire slave thing and everything, how he created his own guild of past villains to take down other guilds, and then he's very powerful. He's a badass. Like I just his entire story totally vibe with it. Anytime Jalal's on screen, I'm like, I'm very excited with what he's about to do next for sure.
But I was very tempted to put Joel on my list, but there's some character stuff going on for right now. I'm really waiting to see where it goes before I really, in my kind of like eyes, like wrap up this character, not like fully, but just like his main kind of primary thing going on, this whole redemption thing. Because the difference between like him and Laxus is Laxus's redemption story kind of relatively finished, and now he's just he's living his life after that whole story and just what he can do now. But Jalal is still trying. He's still like, oh, I haven't done enough. I still need to keep doing all these things. I don't deserve to live a happier life. He's pretty much like in his mind never gonna have done enough, which I do like. I do really like this guy who's constantly trying to make up for his own sins, constantly trying to make up for all these things he did. So yeah. I wanted to rank higher, or I wanted to put him on my list, but I want to wait until the this whole like recent stuff going on for him concludes.
Yeah, I do respect that. Like, you want to see his entire story arc, and I mean, like you said, a lot of the things he's constantly trying to redeem himself. He's constantly trying to wash his sins away, and I mean, what he did was pretty fucked up. So, do understand it.
Yeah.
I mean, very similar to how Seven Deadly Sins does his stuff. So, love Jalal, and let's move on to our top two, big two. Definitely go over that, see what we got here. You said your two is like locked in, right?
Very close.
Interchangeable,
so
locked in.
My number two, because I was surprised that you had number 5 is Zareth, because Zareth legitimately you can't have the story without him. If you go back and look, you legitimately you can't have a lot of stuff involved with them. Like the guild wouldn't get formed because you wouldn't have anyone taught Mavis, Yuri, Preach, and Warren magic. They never would have defeated Blue Skull. You never would have had the Dragon Slayer plan. So the Heartfilias never would have got involved in everything. Lucy probably would have never joined Fairy Tail, even if it somehow got formed. Deliora never would have raided Gray's village, so he would still be living on some other continent somewhere. Wendy wouldn't be in the future. Urza would have. You either would have never had Irene give birth to Urza because she never would have been able to turn back to a human-like body. Natsu obviously never would have gone and been part of the guild. There's so many different aspects of the series that tie back to him, but at the same time, there's so many interesting ways that his character is presented. Like he was first introduced in Chapter 12, which I'm very curious from Yamashima if the Spriggan 12 were because he was introduced in Chapter 12, his name first dropped, or if it's 12 hours because 12 hours on the clock, and he's huge. Dude, Yamashima loves time shit. That's like in all of his series is something about time fuckery. But it's just like how Zareth ties to so many things. Like if you go back and like look everything up the first 200 chapters, he's depicted as this almost religious-like being. He's this godlike wizard that all these characters are trying to obtain. They're trying to do all these different things to get him. And even after we find out about Zareth, like seeing what people want later, like the Avatar cult, or seeing earlier with the whole Tower of Heaven people, is it's more of what they think appeasing Zareth will bring them, more of what their own kind of ideal like aspects that Zareth will promise and what Zareth brings, and he's like constructed up until like his reveal as just this big super evil guy, some big darkness incarnate character, like big bad guy. And then when you finally see him, it's really the opposite. He's just this tortured soul that really wanted everything that in his life that kind of went bad. He just wanted to be with his brother again. And then even after he got cursed by Saram, he wanted to, at first he just decided to kind of live and become like a scholar after he managed to gain his sanity back after he's just going around, uncontrolledly killing people. And no matter how many times he wanted to just walk alongside like life and, a better path, it ended up screwing him. Like back when he thought that he had something with Mavis, and then his curse overtook hers, and she went into this undead coma-like state. He went and left her back at the guild, and when he left, he said that never again would he let himself be taken by something like a concept of love, because he didn't think that he would ever be able to obtain it. There's a really interesting line when Larcade says that he was, Zareth's son, and Zareth says that he was never allowed to have a family. That his curse never would allow him to actually walk in any of this more happy life. And just all these different ways he ties into stuff, all the ways his character's presented, and all the different foils to Natsu is really interesting too. Like how Natsu, with his whole fire, it was all of this kind of, the aspects of fire, destruction and rebirth. How energetic and how high personality he was. The way that had taught him is even when stuff gets you down, to kind of stand up on your 2 feet, move forward, and that was one of the reasons. Like he didn't want the Neo eclipse to happen, because struggling and pain is just part of life, and it's always about how that can change you and how you are able to pick yourself back up from it. Whereas Zareth was this very dark character. He was constantly cheating, trying to find shortcuts around things, and him wanting to undo events from happening, and just all the different kind of styles that he ended up being like this mirrored aspect of a lot of Natsu's character and ideals that, to me, made him the perfect way to kind of be, in a lot of ways, the not the end villain, but really the primary one of the series. And that's one of the reasons I really like Ignia now. And it's not just like the way that like he's a really cool character, he's badass, but I really like how he kind of like mirrors Natsu in a lot of ways. And then like the whole aspect of how the good thing for Natsu, like Igniel's whole like loving this person, taking him like a son, but that ends up becoming a darker thing for another character. And just like how many things for Natsu ended up becoming a darker thing for Zareth. Like the whole aspect of like near the end, like when Zareth, like the end for Zareth, he still remembered all these things about Natsu and all these emotions he had towards his brother, but Natsu didn't remember him at all. He had absolutely no memory of this brother that apparently cared for him so much. And for him, it was just another misfortune that he had, another thing that just kind of stuck with him. Like he finally met up with his brother, and obviously he doesn't remember him, and he has absolutely no memory of him. And he,
I thought Zareth took away his memories.
Huh?
I thought Zareth took away his memories.
Oh, he just never had any of them when he was reborn. He didn't remember because he was like a really little kid, probably like I don't know 3 or 4 sometime when when he died from some stray dragon attack. But it's just so interesting all the ways that Zareth mirrors over aspects of Natsu, just flipped, and all the ways that he ends up being related to the story. Like even now he's being mentioned again. Like he may not be directly involved in the story, but there are characters that are when something happens, they reference Zareth in some way or another, or how much of like the aftermath that he's really had, because he was. Even though that you had Acnologia was more powerful, Zareth was regarded as the blight on the history of magic and wizards. He was the most like despised and powerful dark mage throughout history. And we don't know like what like pertains in the Variantal world past like that 400-year range. But as far as we know, Zareth was like the most chaotic and detrimental being like throughout the story. Like even like looking at like the whole thing when we were introduced, like he from Hades, like he spawned tens of thousands of demons and he spun the world into chaos. But it was depicted as like in that first like drawing of it, the first kind of like depiction of Zareth like doing that, it was he's like this evil sorcerer guy unleashing all his creations for nefarious reasons, but he was just trying to end his own life and just trying to stop his own suffering. But in doing so, he ended up causing suffering to other people, which like every single time he tried to do something in life, he hurt either, he hurt someone like either indirectly or directly, which ended up causing him more suffering to himself.
Yeah.
Because even though he was this death-radiating super dark wizard, he didn't want that life at all. He really wanted to be a better guy. And then when you have over to like Alvarez, he was regarded as this, emperor that brought their whole continent into prosperity. he just absolutely like revolutionized this entire land and brought them into this like complete and total like state of like dominance and like everywhere that Zareth went, like when he actually could control himself, learning how to cheat his curse in some aspects, he did so many good things. But anytime his curse really took hold, it just brought like ruin and decimation, and it really just was outside of his control. He was pretty much forced to become a villain by this god, which was like I really like that aspect. He kept trying to be a better person, but he wasn't allowed to. Yeah, love Zareth. In my opinion, he's Hiromishima's best written character through any of his series, and he's my favorite shonen villain. I love Zareth. I love his whole story and all these different aspects. I did a damn like 5-part video series on my YouTube channel. It's like 5 hours long of just talking about like Zareth and like ways he relates and like his inspiration from Griffith. Have you ever noticed like how many kind of like similarities he has towards Griffith's story?
No, I never really thought about it, to be honest.
Berserk is Hiromishima's favorite manga.
I never knew that. I don't. I'm not surprised. Berserk is crazy good.
Like, when you look at something like Griffith really like he thinking his his whole army were more of units. That's how Zareth learned how to cheat his curse. But as where Zareth really wanted to like people, and he didn't want to be in this position on the throne. In the end of it, he just wanted to have a happy life. Where that's really the opposite of Griffith. He wanted that seat on the castle on the top of the hill, and then the whole like Zareth. When they became the white Zareth, he shed off like all this dark like layer and became a more like angelic being that was going to do this thing to save everybody. Whereas like Griffith, had this more angelic appearance regularly, who was transformed to this more demonic kind of state instead. And really, it was their ties to the main character that led their life to like utter like destruction from Natsu Zareth trying to revive Natsu, and Guts becoming so close to Griffith, really destroying his whole plan and leading everything up to the eclipse. Also, obviously, the eclipse just being involved. There's a lot of small things that Hiroshima relates over to Berserk, but I like that he takes inspiration where like something like that, but he's able to do it in his own version. Yeah. You gotta if you ever reread the series, like you gotta think about something like Griffith and like Berserk. There's a lot of really neat kind of ways that he's involved, especially like Griffith's army and Zareth's army. Like they're just all these different United Nations that they're able to kind of conquer and bring under their banner, and just monsters all involved in it as well. And now he can like weaponize them. Both of them are really interesting. I love both their characters.
Yeah, Griffith is definitely a very good villain character, and Zareth. I mean, if I had to think about while like thinking about it, I would switch him with Loxus and make him number 4. You made a lot of good points, so he may even move up to number 3. Probably still won't take my top 2, but Zareth. I mean, I already said my bits about Zareth. I do very much love his character, his entire story, everything about it, and he's a very tragic character, as you said. And I mean, it's just the horrors of immortality personified on a story such as Fairy Tail, like being immortal, and then add on being immortal, and everything that you're near pretty much dies or is like withering away. Like it's just added on tragedy towards Zareth and his path. Like it's a path that honestly anybody probably would go on if they were put in a similar situation. Because Zareth, although he's a genius when it comes to magic, as a person, he's not really that much different from the next person. It's just like he was in a situation and he couldn't do anything about it. Just had to live life, see where it took him.
Yeah. But let's hear your number 2. I'm interested to see your top 2.
So, very much like how Zareth was low on my list compared to your list. On your list, this character was low to yours and pretty high on my list, and that is Urza from Fairy Tail. I really do like Urza. Like you said, people may have their issues with Urza and whatnot. I personally don't care that much. Like, sure, there's some Deus Ex Machina stuff. I don't like it's. I
I don't
never
know.
really saw it. Like,
I never agreed with it being Deus Ex because something like I said, like something like her fighting without senses, but she lost that fight. I mean, she didn't really beat Irene. Irene kind of like killed herself in her moment of like her sane side taking over and whatnot.
yeah, so like that's similar to me because when I was watching it from beginning to end, no fight that I saw Urza in, I was like, yeah, that didn't make sense. I was like, okay, that's cool. I very much enjoyed it. Like I never was pissed off that in any of Urza's fights. Like they were all good fights for the most part, and they're all interesting fights. And what I like most is that Urza is a character very much like other female characters that I do enjoy, such as Mereoleona and Black Clover and Yoruichi and Bleach. Is she's a strong female character that is shown to be strong, shown to be badass, shown to be a great female character in general, and a great character in general compared to her contemporaries in a shonen, which is gears to young males, usually young males, middle-aged males. Older males love it too, so it doesn't really matter. But males is the point, and usually shonen, like you said, female characters are
No,
usually not
I
done
don't
that
think it's a
well.
lot. It's mostly Shonen Jump specifically.
Yeah, because there's an entire thing
Shonen,
with like other shonen such as FMA and Attack on Titan. Is it shonen? Is it not
yeah.
shonen? But mostly Shonen Jump because that's what people associate shonen with in general. And I just truly enjoyed everything about Urza's character, how she is, her relationship with Jalal, and everything. I think all of it was done well, and she just stood out as a very interesting character compared to everybody else, and unique in how she was like her own genre in general.
Yeah. Like I said, I always really liked it, when it comes to like a lot of the fights. Even in the parts where she feels like really powerful. I mean, I don't think there's many that I don't think there's any characters that were ones that actually like had weight to them, like Avatar was like a weird one because people thought they were going to be powerful because like at first it was like, oh, they're just some, small bad guys. And then they got like the introduction to that arc, they got like a big color page. Everyone's like, oh, well, maybe they're actually going to be pretty strong. And then no, they weren't. But with them, like with Jerome and whatnot, some of them, I'm like, I don't think there's any fights where Urza just like runs through an opponent that she wouldn't logically defeat really easily. Even like some of the fights that some of the characters lose relatively easier than you'd think. Like someone like Natsu like pretty much just trash Nineheart, and it's like, well, yeah, Nineheart's a summoner. Summoners generally aren't geared to be very durable. But then, like I don't think there's any fights from Urza that she won that it was like, oh, that was easy. It's like, no, like she looks like she's barely able to keep standing right now. She just got beaten to hell. But there's also like I said, like a lot of her fights. I think a lot of them that are criticized, I don't agree with a lot of them just because of the way that they're presented. Like I said, like her fight with Kyoka is very, it's one that's very criticized because she was fighting with those senses, but I think that was more of a willpower feat that she ended up losing anyway. So it's not like she really changed anything in the outcome. Or like her fight with Irene, she didn't really win. Irene, killed herself. Or fight with Minerva. I think anybody that is reading that now, like you read that going into that arc with the knowledge that, oh yeah, they just gave him a power up time skip kind of area. You're gonna expect characters to show up with new stuff. I mean, that's just how that's the whole point of it. Oh yeah, we're actually showing all these are the fruits of our training and our efforts. But why wouldn't you assume that she's gonna have some really cool new armor? Yeah, I agree. I really like Urza in general because on top of all these things, like with Jalal, she's shown a lot of times just to have a very human side, and I think her interactions with Jalal are the best examples of it. Because regardless of how this character who's extremely powerful has all these different magic armors and weapons and done all these crazy things like fighting a demon while she has none of her five senses, she's still like a young woman at the same time, and where you see her completely just broken down into this nervous state while she's in front of the guy that she has very strong feelings for. It makes her character that much more able to kind of get attached to when you see just those weaker sides to them, on top of seeing their big flex periods of time.
Yeah, exactly. And Urza, and I just really like the badass female characters in general. I mean, I'm very attuned to badass characters, if you haven't noticed. And
Oh yeah, for sure. That's one of the things that always bothers me about like a lot of shonen is it's more of when they waste them. And I already know that you, from this discussion, you read One Piece. That's one of the things that's post time skip I got bothered with, because like Robin doesn't do anything anymore. She's just kind of there.
Yeah.
And then it's like right after the time skip, she was like intercepted second gear Luffy and Jinbei. I'm like, damn, she must be really powerful now. She hasn't really done anything, and it just bothers the hell out of me when you have characters like that just are there, but they don't really do anything.
Yeah, I personally, probably my favorite female character of One Piece would be Boa, probably. And
I'm just thinking the first person that came to my head. I'm thinking of just Perona. I just always liked her.
I like Perona. Some people don't like her. I was like, what? I mean,
I don't know. I think she's fun.
Yeah, she's a cool character. Boa is gonna have a huge. Oh, when we go back into that whole warlord system.
Oh, we're gonna talk about that at a different period.
That
that whole situation. I'm on the side of Kobe, and I know I'm the underdog in that situation. But I want Kobe. I want the next time you see her is Kobe's got her sea stone cuffed up and thrown over his shoulder. Just be a badass.
Okay,
I need it.
I like Kobe. I like Kobe.
Nothing.
I like Kobe, but hell no, that is not gonna. That better not happen.
Just wait, Kobe's about to show his flex. You just wait, it's gonna happen.
He's about to beat Boa Hancock, a warlord. He went from. Is it a captain? He's a captain about to beat a warlord. Okay.
I think they had to switch it because they said he was a vice admiral, and I think that was a
no. They said rear admiral. They said rear admiral.
Did they?
Yeah, it was.
I think it was. I'm pretty sure it was a misprint. Like they messed up on that, and they had to redo it.
Yeah, I heard.
Just on a side note, on the whole like warlord cancellations, one specifically that I think it's a horrible idea on the Marines. I think the Marines are a bunch of idiots for it.
Dracula Mihawk.
Cutting ties with Mihawk.
Oh my! That was the worst decision they ever
Mihawk's
did.
The only one that hasn't shown to be problematic. He's been cooperative, and then they send people to go after him. And I'm like, there has to be at least an admiral on that ship.
There has to be two admirals to be on that ship.
Yeah, otherwise they're sending these Marines to their graves.
They're all gonna die.
Hancock's she's strong, but like the gap between all of the seven warlords and like Mihawk is by far the strongest. Like not even comparable.
Yeah, he's the strong.
Why would you cut ties to him in general?
Exactly.
I got so annoyed at that part. I was trying to figure out the logic of, hey, we have the strongest swordsman on the planet. Let's just go try and arrest him. It's like, why? He's already on your tie.
I mean, if you consider it too, like he's the strongest swordsman. You know, other swordsmen that exist in the world that are also swordsmen that are not as strong as Mihawk. I mean, I don't know. We got Shanks. I mean, Fujitora is a swordsman.
Shanks is the weird argument because it's like, well, then it's the new like Big Mom. Big Mom has a sword.
I honestly think Mihawk is stronger than Shanks.
Weird weapon is regarded as a sword. It's a weird one, but I mean, primary swordsman, yeah. Mihawk.
I think Mihawk's stronger.
It's just a weird one.
I mean,
Mihawk getting cut ties is I can't fathom why you would want to do that.
Yeah, if it took 3 admirals to take down Whitebeard, you better have at least 2 to fight Mihawk. Like,
and one, there has to be at least one on that ship. Is some
and Fujitora is
Kizaru or someone.
Fujitora is with Boa. Is with Kobe and Boa, right? Doing the Kobe and Boa.
I don't know if it showed any of the admirals.
Because I thought he was.
I had to go back and look, but I don't remember any of the admirals actually being shown. I saw a bunch of captains and stuff, but I don't remember any admirals.
It did show Fujitora was on the ship. He was heavily injured.
I'd have to go back and look. I have no idea. I can't remember.
Oh, fair enough.
But yeah.
Let's move on to our number ones, the big Uno. Who is our favorite characters in Fairy Tail?
Before I go to the explanation, I'm going to say my favorite is still Natsu. Who is your favorite?
Oh my goodness. All right.
Who did you pick?
Gray, Fullbuster.
So let me go into my reasons for Natsu. So like I said, so close with Zareth, but I've loved watching Natsu's story, and I did a long video. It's like 45 minutes going over like because Natsu as a character has developed in a lot of ways, but it's not as like I said someone like Eren or Deku where it's very visible because of how much of a gap there like the plan is because you can't have crybaby Deku be as heroic as he became a much stronger character, and though he's still like a little nerdy guy, he's become much more confident, much more powerful. Aaron's whole thing of him grasping the whole severity of all the world, like with Natsu, it's a lot more of how he thinks and how he how he acts as a person. Like he's still himself. He still likes to fight people. He still likes to goof around. But like looking at something like how he treated Lucy at the start of the series, he treated her like shit. And then like looking at her at even the Grand Magic Games when he saw the future Lucy die, and it brought him to tears. Like getting the first aspects of like his sides, like when we found out like Mako hadn't returned yet from a quest, and when he saw Romeo really freaking out about the absence of his dad, not knowing if he's alive or dead, and how much like you can see that in Natsu himself. Like when you go back and look at that chapter after finding out so much about him, and it's like you can see like from his mindset of he can see himself in that this frightened and unsure child not knowing what happened to his dad. Is he going to come home later that day, the next day? Is he ever going to see him again? And then like some of the stuff like with Jalal and that whole like when he saw Urza crying, because when Natsu and Gray saw Urza crying, it was much different. If you like look at like Juvia or Lucy like seeing Urza crying, for them it was like she's going through some emotional stuff. For Natsu and Gray it was weird for them because they had seen this character like Urza as this very powerful knight like woman that even though she is a person with her own emotions, like for them like seeing a weak side to her was just astonishing.
Oh yeah.
And like how much that just like not only was upset that he saw her her in a crying in this broken emotional state, but it was like this feeling because he's like he was mad about her crying like as a concept of him Jalal stealing this vision of like how he saw Urza in a lot of ways. Because like with Natsu, like early in the series with the guild, he has this it's a much different like feeling to how he is like now. Like with the guild it was much more the concept, like he fighting with members of the guild, he didn't seem to really care when one of them got captured and whatnot. It seemed more if he loved the idea of the guild. And then like once the guild got destroyed in Phantom Lord, he kind of grasped more on other characters and more of like the people around him, because up until that point he wasn't. I think he was a little bit damaged from the loss of Lisana and whatnot, and we know that like he was very sensitive about that aspect too. But with like Ignil, where it was like back when Gildart showed back up and he mentioned about finding a Black Dragon, and Natsu was like, I'm going to go find him. Running off to go do it, and just like seeing this potential of actually finding his dad, falling in that that little embankment, and then being brought to near tears, just thinking about the status of his dad, and like how much that like rattled his character of this delinquent, very high energy dude who at the end of the day is constantly wanting to figure out what happened to his dad, constantly just worried, like I said, not knowing if he's alive or if he's dead, if his whole search for him is actually going to do anything, or if he's just, looking for nothing. And when you see like that whole thing like fully come into fruition, especially like when he finally found his dad, and I like I said, I get into a lot of arguments about stuff all the time, and like I know like with because the easy example we talk about is One Piece. When Ace died, I felt like nothing.
Really? I was very sad when Ace died.
Because like with Ace, his character was never really around. Like he was just in some like volume covers, and then like look at some of the same.
No,
thing. Like,
I cared that Luffy
it wasn't.
But how Luffy saw him.
Because that's gonna say it's like with Igna was in a similar situation. We didn't really see much of him up until the point where he came back. But we saw a lot of the weight from like how Natsu felt about him, and a lot of it was like how Natsu was damaged by it, how it almost broke him. And like I said, with Luffy, he didn't even really mention Ace until like what, Alabasta. Even though it was his brother, he cared on him. He never really talked much about him. You never really saw like just the level of care he had for him. Because like I said, anytime Igno was mentioned, it rattled Natsu to his core. Like he would be absolutely just shaken up thinking about like think about his dad in general. Like I said, like back when he thought he could maybe find him, try like going in looking for Acnologia, or when he finally did see him, and he was just brought to tears, and then how much he wanted just to talk to him, and that was what really hurt him most when Ignil died. Is it wasn't just oh, my dad died. It was, I finally found him again, and I wanted to tell him all these things that I've done with my life and everything that I've accomplished, and I can't do that now. There were so many words that I'd spent years getting ready to say, and I can't even do that. And stuff like that, it was like how much you see really Natsu like as a person in a lot of ways. Because like I said, Hiroshima, the way that he presents a lot of the characters, they've got their own fun personalities and whatnot. But like with stuff like that, where you're getting them broken down, you can see the aspects of them that are they're just a person at the end of it. Despite all their quirks and all of their traits, whether or not they're some silly or some super badass character. And someone like Ichiya, who's for the most part a comedic character, but like when you had the Thunder Legion, I always say Thunder Legion, Raijin Shu, or the million different pronunciations and translations of their name. But like when they ended up shielding him from the wall robot explosion, you just saw this character who for the most part is just present for chuckles, brought to this like broken down state, like in tears of seeing these people that he cared for, actually show that they care about him. But like with Natsu, and like when it comes down to it, you just see all these different ways he's developed. And like I said, with Jalal, he like when Jalal came back in the Erasion Seis arc, just like the idea of him pissed him off. He wanted just to go and fight him again, just at knowing what he did, and like he didn't have this concept of forgiveness and like the whole flame of rebuke, and that whole experience and how much he's come to like kind of understand that people can redeem themselves, people can get better. And then, like, looking at Acnologia, like, when Acnologia is talking about how, how much dragons were unforgivable and, anybody siding with dragons were unforgivable and all the destruction and just pain they caused. And how Natsu, like, was presenting, like, it's not dragons that did it. It's just like how there's good people and there's bad people. As he came more to understand that it's more of the individual, and even in some cases, like I said, in the 100 Years Quest, one of the characters, one of the dragon gods, is trying to live a better life and trying to make up for everything they did. And Natsu can really kind of understand that, and it calls back to like stuff like with Jalal and how much of these different experiences in his life have really changed. And like I said, with Hiroshima, similar to what I like about Tabata and Black Clover, it's not so much as just every arc, the main character is going to be like drastically different, or if it's like 2 arcs from now, they're like with Aaron. Aaron was so much different over the time skip from how he was before. You don't get that with something like Hiroshima or Tabata, because it's really each arc is going to add like an extra piece to their life that by the end of it you look back and you can pinpoint all the different spots that it's like, oh, learned a lesson here, learned a lesson here. Like with Gildarts, when Gildarts humbled Natsu, and he really realized that if he really wants to be strong, he needs to know where he's weak, and he needs to acknowledge that being weak is one of the things that you need to know, because that's how you improve off of it, and that's how you become like more aware of yourself, how you're really able to improve like the yourself to the fullest. And then, like, how you immediately see that an arc later, and when he's fighting Future Rogue, he's losing. He realizes he has to pull out. He has to, strategize, figure out a plan, which was so foreign to Natsu at the time. Like a character who really was just head first in every fight, improvise as needed, and go until you collapse. And then, up into the Alvarez arc, or like in Alvarez. Like, it's just like the part where he says, like, oh, no, I can't go all out in every fight, like, at the start, because then when am I going to, I'm going to be out of energy and out of magic when I need it. And that was, like, it was enough that Happy was just like, I can't believe that he's actually doing this. This is so weird to him. And then I I think one of there's two specific points in the Albrecht arc I think are the biggest examples of growth for Natsu that I always use when people say he's never developed. The first one is when he's talking to Lucy before the war starts, because generally when you have like a shonen main character, they're either fine with killing or they're not fine with killing. There's not a lot that are in between. And Natsu was in this state when he's talking to Lucy how he doesn't like to kill, but he knows how serious the war is and how he's willing to, cross that line, and end somebody's life if it means protecting his own, which I really liked because and a lot of the times he's shown as like he likes to have fun, he likes to goof, he likes to prank people. He's shown as this very immature person, but it's really that's just because it brings a smile to his face. But then you have something as serious and as heavy as war, and he's able to kind of grasp like there's no real good guys or bad guys in a war, but you have to be able to cross certain lines if you want to actually protect what what's precious to you. And then in like I said, like when it comes to like members of the guild, I think early on like he wasn't as close to them in a lot of the ways. Like he didn't have as much of like a grasp on like the actual like the whole friendship aspects of the series. It wasn't until the whole Phantom Lord arc, I don't think he fully grasped to himself about it. Because when you look at like Gray, when he first was going to use the ice shell and Natsu stopped him, like the way that Natsu presented it, he was like, does dying really win the fight for you? That it's really just running away. Like he pretty much said like you're just gonna sacrifice yourself to win, and you're not thinking of anybody else. You're being and really like a TLDR, like he just told Gray he was being a pussy. It's just like, hey, damn, you're being very, very.
Are you talking about the first time Gray tried to do Ice Shell?
Yeah, the first time he was just like he was pissed off and he was very serious about it.
Yeah, it was a good moment.
When Ignil died, Natsu like really experienced like the death of somebody close to him for the first time, and he went into the Albrecht arc knowing like it was. Like, Ignil just didn't die. He sacrificed himself for Natsu and, staying with the Dragon Slayers all those years. He became weaker than he was in order to, keep his, who he saw as his son safe. And when he went up to fight just Zareth, Natsu was ready to sacrifice himself. He was ready to die in order to protect those he cared about. Something similar to like that of what Ignil did for him. But he wasn't looking at the same kind of like weight behind it, because like with Ignil, it was there was no other option. He had to do it in order to fend off Acnologia. Acnologia retreated after losing his arm, and with like Natsu was kind of just going for like a shortcut route of just try and kill Zareth in order to end the war and save as many people as possible. But for him, he wasn't really thinking about, what that would do to other people. When he goes to try and kill Zareth, well, whether or not he could or not at that point is up to debate. But when Happy, saw like, oh, well, Zareth said, as living magic works as, a demon of the Book of Zareth, once I die, you die, and Natsu was okay with that, for protecting those that he cared about. And Happy was like freaking out about it because he didn't want Natsu to die. And when Natsu was let me finish this fight, and Happy was just distraught over it. And he's like, aren't we friends? Why would you can't abandon me? And I think similar to how Natsu saw himself in Romeo, worrying about his dad, Natsu saw like in Happy similar to how he was gonna feel if Natsu died, similar to how Natsu was when Ignil died, as just this guy who pretty much like was his adoptive father, because that's how Ignil was to Natsu. Natsu pretty much is to Happy, and how he would have just been in that same situation, doing to him what leaving him in that state that Ignil left Natsu in. But also when Gray went to go use Ice Shell again and Natsu stopped him, it's a much more emotional thing. Like he's in tears, trying, seeing his friend, try and die for his sake and for those around him. And he says the same lines like that Happy said to him. He's like, "Aren't we friends? You shouldn't do this just for us. You shouldn't die for our sake." And I think that those are two really big moments for his character.
I was very upset at that moment, by the way.
Yeah. Huh?
I was very upset at that moment. I'll explain when we talk about Gray.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, so I was saying, like, those are two, like, huge moments for his character, like, and like, how he's grown. And like I said, like, not, like, similar to not, like, Natsu, he's still himself at the end of the day, because, like, not every single character has to be drastically different at the end of their story. I mean, look at someone like someone like Naruto. I mean, he still like has a lot of his personality that he grew up on, but he's learned so many other things, and he's become so much more of a person throughout his journey. And that's what Natsu has in a lot of ways. But really, I think that the easiest one, like I said, is the one with Gray and Ice Shell, because you have two situations, both of him stopping Gray from using Ice Shell, and two drastically different reactions that really just showed how much he's changed as a person, how much he really has developed emotionally and mentally, instead of it just being like, hey, don't do this, you loser. If you do this, you still die, and that's not really a win. Versus like, don't die for my sake. You should live on for my sake. And I really liked that whole aspect about like his character and how much he's grown. Given just that one point. But yeah, go on. Tell me your whole stuff about Gray.
All right. So before we get to Gray, I do only want to say one thing. I think you made a lot of good points with Natsu, and like, I think he did mature as a character. I did enjoy his character. My only gripe, the reason why I truly could never put him in my top 10, is the entire situation with how he would lose the fight, eat something, get strong, beat the enemy in a lot of arcs. And I didn't.
That's like a setup of how his power works. That's just one of the Slayer like traits.
I mean,
that's like
I get it.
Aspect.
I get it, but no one else really does it. And Gajil kind of does it, but not really.
I mean, Gajil did, and then despite when he was fighting those guys on Sirius Island, he did it to beat Rogue. When he did it to beat Bloodman. I think the Slayer ability. I mean, really, that's how like him and Gajil both fought when Natsu and Gajil fought the Phantom Lord.
Yeah, but
even Gajil ate some metal, got boosted.
Yeah, but Natsu would eat other things other than fire, and that's what's like.
That depends, because when he ate Ethereon. So with Ethereon specifically, we knew that it was stated, they can't eat elements outside of their own. We didn't know why. We had absolutely no idea why it was the case. It's like with motion sickness. We didn't know motion sickness, like why it worked, like why it rendered them pretty much crippled.
Right.
We found out it had to do with their dragon senses and overloading that aspect for the human body, it being too much for them when it came to something like motion sickness, but why it didn't affect them when they were on an animal, because it had animal-like movements versus a car. But like with Ethereon, we didn't know why it did it. We didn't know why they couldn't eat their other elements, and then we found out it's dangerous for them. It was something that they could do, but it was risky. It could have detrimental effects, and we saw that with Ethereon. And afterward, he was pretty much like putting himself through agony in order even to get to that point. And even after he got the Dragon Force boost, he had horrible not insomnia, narcolepsy issues for what was it, like 2 weeks. I think it was 10 or 11 days where he would just pass out regularly. I mean, even if it's not like, I'm crippled, I can't use my arms. Just passing out is a huge thing.
I mean,
you pass out in the middle of a fight, some guy could just kill you. It's similar to his Savage Dragonfire. If you do this and you don't end the fight with that whole thing, you're screwed. Because imagine if he didn't beat Jalal by the time that power up was in effect, then he just passes out. Jalal goes up and just kills him. Yeah. And then with the Dragon Slayer Lacrima, because it's very consistent throughout the story that anybody who has a hybrid mode got it from somebody who has a Dragon Slayer Lacrima. Because when it came down to, they can't eat their elements, they can only eat their own, that was only the concept of first-generation Dragon Slaying, because the Lacrimas were a new concept. And we knew from Ivan that the Dragon Slaying Lacrimas could be transferred to a different body. And everybody that ended up getting it ended up either getting it from not having a Dragon Slaying Lacrima in their body and eating the element of somebody who had theirs, versus, in some cases, like with Feature Rogue, he straight ripped the Dragon Slaying Lacrima out of Sting and put it in his own body. But when you see something like Natsu and Gajil, both of them got theirs from people with Lacrima, which are transferable. That being why they're only temporary, and it's such a draining thing for them to really use. It's unnatural for their own state versus someone like God Serena, who could just swap between them at will because they were implanted in his own body. It was all internal, the way that it was set up. To me, it's it's one of those base aspects of their power that it's something that ties to it. It's the highest trait to slaying magic, dragon slaying specifically, while motion sickness is their biggest weakness. You know, you have you can pretty much counter anybody who has the same element. You have an easy way to replenish magic and stamina, versus you have this crippling weakness that if put under you can easily be defeated. So to me, like the whole element eating, I still think it's really. I've never had a problem with it, just because it's been something that existed in the series. We know that it's existent, and then you have something like Zenkro. Zenkros is one of those ones where I wish it wasn't the case, because I love Zenkro. I thought he was really cool, but like he was not even mid-level of the seven kin, and I mean, really, like he's like the perfect kind of character to display the whole dragon slaying ability to adapt to a different body. Because like with like for instance, like with because he wasn't even Natsu's big fight in that arc. I mean, if it was something like with when Gachil did it against Torafuza or Bloodman, it would have felt like it would have just been out of nowhere. It would have been a writing inconsistency. It would have just kind of been an ass pull. But when you have it set up long before against someone like Zenkro, like I said, who really wasn't even like a big shot. I mean, he was a big shot in the guild. He wasn't a big shot in the enemies in that arc. I mean, you still had Old Tier, Blue Note, Azuma, Rusty Rose, Hades. You had much more formidable forces that you had to contend with. So the whole eating elements thing, I always liked the way that Hiromishima's handled it and the way that it's been presented. Personally, I think it's been really well executed in the way that it's always been handled. And even something like I said with like Ethereon, it was something that we knew that they weren't supposed to, but we never really up until a point we didn't know why.
I mean, I personally, like, I get your points, but I still disagree completely because, like you said, they brought up the entire point right at the very beginning that these Dragon Slayers are not supposed to be eating anything. And then the first arc he does it, like, okay, sure, he had to do it to save Urza.
That wasn't the first arc. That was like 90
no, I
chapters
mean,
in.
not the, like, the first, I consider, like, the entire Jalal thing, like, the first major arc. Like, there's the Gajil.
Phantom Lord is the first major arc, come on.
It's true, but, like, that's what I'm thinking when it calls, like, Natsu's biggest fights. Like,
that's when you find out why, because there has to be a reason why it is. I mean, it's like with One Piece, like you can't have two devil fruit in the same body. We don't know why yet, or like why does the ocean mess with their powers? We don't know why. There could be something that straight counters it, or it has something to do with like how like sea salt or seawater. I think it just like submerged in water, however it is. It's one of those ones where it was an explanation of why exactly that is, and it was early on enough in the series that it didn't feel out of place. And plus, personally, for me, like the main character's first power up, you can't hate on it. I mean, it's gonna happen.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I said,
look at Asta getting his black form first time running through Ladros.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the first time he did, I was like, okay, I didn't have a problem with it the first time. He ate something, overpowered Jalal right after he ate something. Then they kept on doing it in other arcs where he just ate something. Like he would lose either the first fight or be losing. Then he would eat something that's not supposed to be something he usually would eat. Then overpowers his...
He wasn't supposed to, because the only other straight element outside of his was Laxus's lightning, but that was given to him, and we knew that dragon slaying lacrimas are transferable between body to body.
Yeah, but that was never explained how he was able to eat lightning. Like, even though if you... No, but you're trying to explain it.
Because Laxus gave it to him. He didn't straight eat it. Laxus gave it to him.
Like, gave him the lacrima? He got
knocked out and he wanted... Huh?
You said he gave him the lacrima?
You said...
Are you saying he gave...
No, he transferred the magic. He gave him the magic, and the magic is transferable. Because we've seen magic in general is transferable. But that's why it's only a mode and not permanent. Because it's only a piece of it. It's only a magical aspect to it. It's not.
I mean, even
the physical lacrima.
Even then, my still problem is he would gain this power up out of nowhere and then defeat the big baddie at the end of the arc.
He didn't defeat Hades with it, though.
He basically defeated Hades, though. Like
he roared and then Hades got back up.
But Hades was pretty much lost at that point. Like the arc was pretty much like...
No, he wasn't. He got back up and he took his eye patch off and he was serious. All he did was he got annoyed. that was when he decided to fight seriously. And Natsu didn't win with with that power up. They won because the Exceed went and destroyed his heart, and then Ultir betrayed Hades and brought the Sirius Island tree back up.
Okay.
Reread or rewatch some of this, man.
I mean, I haven't watched Fairy Tail in a very long time, but still, the
That
fact. I mean, the fact that it still happens in every arc is still very annoying. Whether like, I mean,
it's
you can
never,
have.
I mean, like the Grand Magic games, like it was a fire dragon. I mean, he fully could eat fire. I mean, that just set up.
Okay, I mean,
I
I
don't know,
wasn't having.
Tartaros. He didn't eat anything in the Tartaros arc. He didn't eat anything in Albreath either.
Well, I still very much hated how he gained a power up. Like it would happen. Like the eating part is not like what I inherently have a problem with. Is that he would gain some type of power up, and then overall just overpower the big baddie somehow, some way. And it's very like it would seem very apparent that for the most of the part he wasn't stronger than Loxus. He wasn't stronger than Urza until
Laxus lost because he wasted a lot of magic on Fairy Law. He was like barely able to keep standing after he saw magic, and he was like losing his mind.
well,
And then, like even after that, like Laxus, like Gajiel and like Gajiel said that like they would not have won a fair fight against Laxus. It was only because he wasted all this magic doing stuff that they managed to win.
right. So what I'm saying
Like
is I don't.
here, like it was like he just got pissed off because he thought Gray got taken out. I mean, with Zareth, the Flames of Emotion got set up all the way back in the fight with Aragorn. We already saw twice prior that his magic could affect time. Back when Zareth stopped time in the Tartarus arc, and when Demaria did it, there's a lot of stuff that it connects. I think part of the problem is that Hiramashima, like he expects a lot of people to remember certain things. Like I said, like Flames of Motion was something introduced at the start of the series, and it's prevalent. It's not really a mention again up until like this fight with Zareth. It's something that's always been tied to his magic, but it's not something that's been brought up multiple times. Like I said, with some of these, like with eating magic, I mean, like with fire, I mean, outside of Ethereon, which Ethereon had fire in it, that's how he was able to do it in the first place. It was the other magic, or other elements from mixed into it, that it was dangerous for him. And with Laxus, it was because Laxus gave it to him, and it was, from a dragon sling Lacrima, specifically. It's not like, he couldn't just have, Gajiel, hand over like a piece of his metal. We saw that from Wendy could enchant powers into other people, but that's because she's an enchantress. But it's way less prevalent than I think you remember. You might have to reread some stuff.
No, I would say.
Said
No, the problem, like I said, is not the fact that he's eating it. The problem, in my opinion, whether it has a good explanation or not, the fact that it keeps happening, that he would gain some type of power up, lose the first time, gain a power up, overwhelm his enemy, which is a big baddie who's supposed to be stronger than other.
Which ones are you referring to? Because like Gajiel and him were even.
Yes.
With Laxus, it's because Laxus ended up wasting all this magic. With Zero, it's because Jalal straight gave him his magic. He wanted him to defeat him. He thought he wanted to.
Well, like I said,
he thought he was the only person in that.
Well, like I said, you have explanations for all of them, so that means it does keep on happening. So that's the point. It does keep on happening. So
with some of them, I mean, like with Jalal, with even between like up until the point of Jalal, that's 90 plus chapters, and between the next one, that's another 70. The next one isn't until the fight with Hades, which is.
But these are big arcs. So in every big arc, there's a big baddie that's overwhelmingly strong. He gains a power up, loses the first time, overwhelms his enemy.
Hades the first time, and the power up wasn't.
Well, Hades was the second guildmaster, so he was just assumed to be very.
Hades because of the power up. They beat Hades because they took out his heart that gave him longevity and let him, feel like a young guy when he was over 100 years old. And Ultir betrayed him, and then with Future Rogue, it was more because of Atlas Flame. He threw Natsu. He threw the physical strength of a dragon behind him, and the dragon physical strength has shown constantly to be above their roars. And then with Zareth, that was always something that was part of his powers. With Mark Gear, he had a rage mode. I mean, I wouldn't really call that him just getting a power up out of nowhere. That was his emotional aspect that has been part of his power since, like I said, since the Aragorn fight at the first 20 chapters of the series.
Okay,
I mean, he didn't get anything in his fight with like the Galuna Island. It's not nearly as prevalent, I think, that you're remembering.
No, I think I remember like from literally all your the mentions you had, like other than the future Rogue arc, because I just don't even remember that one. And the Galuna Island is the one with Gray's like partner, right?
That was with Leon.
Yeah, yeah. So that one, those
two.
two.
He didn't even fight the primary bad guy with Gajiel. I mean, Gajiel and him were even. Gajiel
yeah, I'm okay with that
first.
one. I'm okay with the Gajiel one, and it's
so
like.
Which ones are you referring to?
Well, we got the Jalal, we got the Loxus, we got Hades, we got Zero, we got
to beat Laxus.
The fact that he beat Loxus.
He didn't get power up.
How did?
So that's because Laxus used Fairy Law and wasted a bunch of his magic.
Exactly. So the point is, like, somehow Noxu would somehow beat an opponent he should. It seems like he shouldn't be able to do. And at the beginning, like, I had no problem with it, but after just thinking about it, all the arcs that it's happened, it was kind of annoying. And then at the last arc, when he beat Zeref, like 1-on-1, just straight up beat Zeref, I was like, really?
That's because Zeref made him to be able to do that.
But he made E&D Nord.
Zeref made it. No, he is E&D. That's part of his powers. But he is linked to the book. If you go back and look, so Natsu, his ethereal powers are not gone. They're still linked to his body. They still exist.
Linked to the book, right? So,
yeah,
so the
book. Part of them.
So if they are able to manipulate the book, he was able to be Zeref. And
no, she didn't manipulate the book. She put back the letters that had disappeared. All she did was put back the ones that were already there. She didn't do anything. She didn't alter anything to him.
And how did Lucy had the book, right?
Yes, she didn't alter anything.
Then how did Lucy get the book?
When they were going to fight, Zeref.
How'd she get the book?
I think Happy grabbed it. It might have been Mavis. I can double check, but
I don't
it was
remember.
when they went to the guild when Nazi went to go stop him. Actually, I think Mavis took it. Mavis took it when she left.
See, my thing is, you have good explanations, and all your explanations make sense. I'm not denying any of that. I just have the problem with it. The same trope keeps happening again. Is my issue.
I don't agree with it being him getting, him just, he just beat some guy out of nowhere. With Zeref, it was all set up. Like that, there's aspects.
Well, you said Mavis got the book? And how did Mavis get the book? How did Mavis get the book? Like, all of a sudden, someone...
She escaped. Mavis escaped when she tricked and she made an illusion, so Irene thought she was, still draining her, but she had left. So Mavis had it when she escaped the guild.
So, like I say, all of a sudden, they were able to obtain his book, and then Lucy was able to all of a sudden write in the book, and then Natsu.
She wasn't all of a sudden able to write it. She couldn't read the language. She didn't know it. She didn't do anything different. All she did was put back the letters that had disappeared. All she did was undo the damage that attack that Zeref had done to him.
How'd she do that?
He gained some extra power. So the book is already attached to him. It's linked to his life. The difference between him and other Aetherius is his book and him exist at the same time. If you go and look at when Zeref ends up shooting a hole through the book, where Natsu grabs on his chest is the same spot that the demon seed formed in.
Right.
It's just the same spot that part of his demon powers spawned from. Zeref had always created it like this. I mean, and then on top of that, his magic would already counter. It's like any of Zeref's hacks, any of his broken abilities, Natsu could either burn or his scarf could absorb. And Zeref, on top of that, he abandoned a lot of his more complicated and crazy magics because he had spent 400 years just like fantasizing about this fight. That's why he'd been slowly becoming crazier and less stable since the start of the fight up until like the end. When he ended up going against Natsu, he just wanted to have that final clash, and even throughout it, he wanted to lose. He wanted to die every single time. When he thought Natsu was going to kill him with the Igneal tattoo power up that Igneal left him in his body, he was happy because he thought he was going to die. He wanted to lose, But at the same time, he wanted to end up doing the Neo Eclipse because he wanted to undo all the damage he had done for 400 years. This is all stuff that had been set up long beforehand in the story. Like I said, with Laxus, it's because Laxus wanted to end it with Fairy Law, because it was to him the sign that he had surpassed his grandfather, because he had wanted to overcome him, so it would become his own identity. At that point, he wasn't Makarov's grandson. In his mind, that's what made him Laxus. That's when he finally, in the eyes of what he thought people saw him, that would be what does it. That's why he's Fairy Law, but he ended up wasting a lot of his magic in the first place. And in Fairy Tale, your magic is like directly linked to your body. It shows like how strong and physical you are. That's why when they run out of magic, they actually become very physically weak. It's because their bodies are actually stemmed and like powered by magic. That's one of the reasons why they're able to defeat Acnologia, is with motion sickness, Dragon Slayers can't draw out their magic, so their bodies become way weaker. And we already know from, like, when Wendy ended up getting her magic reduced to near zero from Obra, she actually had to get hospitalized because magic deficiency can kill you. And when it comes to something like Laxus, he had drained a lot of magic to do this, and that's the only reason Natsu was able to get the upper hand at that point. Again, the idea of him getting boosts by eating elements, well, that's just a key component of Slayer magic in general. And that's just how the magic works. And a lot of these opponents, like Faust, they were fighting the Dorna on him. They didn't lose and then suddenly come back. They were going to lose. They ended up figuring out a way to pretty much hold him down. Wendy ended up boosting Natsu's attack, and they were able to pierce through it, take him out. With Hades, it was purely because during all this whole fight, you had outside sources helping them in order to defeat him. With Future Rogue, it was because of specifically Atlas Flame. Atlas Flame is the one that really delivered the end attack on Rogue. It was not Natsu. Even though Natsu was the one that hit him, it was the physical strength of a dragon that really did it. It's not nearly like as much as like a Jimmy. I think you remember. It's like with Godchill. I mean, Godchill and Natsu were even. Godchill powered himself up first, and then Natsu was able to only defeat him because he was able to get his magic replenished as well, and then put it all out at the same time. Oh. And in terms of getting like a straight boost, I mean, you can look at it like Jalal, like when he fought Zero, but that's because Jalal straight gave him his magic and he wanted him to have it. Like, there's not a lot of times otherwise that he went up against a guy, lost, and he had to get a power up to win. Like, really, it was really it was like it's Zero. When it comes to like something like Jackal, it was because Jackal's power just was a straight counter to him. Like, you have a melee character who's now going to be touching this guy. Anything that touches him becomes a bomb.
Real quick. I'm going to cut you off because this seems like a topic for an entire another video, because we can go on this back and forth. I have...
Yeah, do your great stuff.
Yeah, I have...
going on longer than I anticipated.
Yeah, I have an entire another series I call Change My Mind Anime Edition, where I have civil debates against people, and I feel like this would be a perfect topic to talk about.
Go ahead, do your great stuff. This is like 3 hours long.
Yeah, it's long. I didn't expect it to go this long, but... Gray. Love Gray's character. Very similar to Natsu's journey. I think where it comes to Gray, he's a little bit more of a character who he's not overpowered. He's not like, he doesn't have Dragon Slayer magic in the beginning. His magic is very simple and nothing too like out there compared to being a Dragon Slayer or a Demon Slayer until he becomes a Demon Slayer. He fights creatively. He doesn't fight to overpower people. He tries to use his wits to win. Very cool, calm, and collected, like Ice powers. And then he gets his Demon Slayer power up. His father died in the same arc that Igneal died, which is actually pretty interesting. Didn't realize that until I started thinking about it just recently. And then he gained the power up. He took an oath to take down END. And that entire situation with Natsu and Gray was very interesting. And I really did like how Gray, after the entire thing with Natsu, took it upon himself to try to defeat Zeroth, and he had the ability to defeat Zeroth. I didn't like Natsu that stopped him, but I understand why Natsu stopped him. I thought he
wouldn't have defeated me. He would
have erased his existence. He would have erased his existence.
Gray would have been erased. All it would have done was put Ice Shell. It just made Ice Shell stronger. And it
Are
would
you
have been
sure?
a longer time until Zareth got out. Zareth wouldn't have been erased.
I must be like I know that Gray would have been like erased from existence, but I
Okay.
don't. I didn't. I think it was at the very least it was a permanent ice shell. I don't know if it was timed compared to Deliora.
He said all it would was it would just hold him for an extended period of time, and Gray said that was enough for him to keep his friends safe.
Was that what it says in the manga?
Yeah, that's why Natsu didn't want him to do it. Natsu wouldn't have wanted him to sacrifice himself in the first place. That was the very interesting thing about the interaction is because he had to learn from his attempt at self-sacrifice, the way that it would affect others, and that's what he was kind of doing with Gray. Because not only with Gray was not only going to sacrifice him, but he was going to erase himself from all these people.
No, I understand why Natsu did it. I'm not saying Natsu shouldn't have done it. I'm just saying I thought it would have been a more interesting ending if Gray went through with it. I did, like keep in mind I didn't know there was going to be like another part to the story. But if there wasn't going to be another part to the story, having Gray pretty much defeat Zeref at that point in time, and then Natsu defeating Ethnologia, obviously, which was going to happen right after. I thought that would have been a much more interesting ending to a story because it would have countered all of our predictions of this happening. Everybody would have been super surprised. It would have been super sad with Gray's end. And yeah, overall, beginning to end, with all the stuff you said that's going on with him currently, he's doing bits, trying to get stronger. Love Gray's character.
Fantastic. Yeah, I always really liked Gray too. I really enjoy how much even though he's in that rival position, it doesn't really feel like a rival a lot of the time. And he's just like that. He's that coworker that they've got semi-professional beef with.
Yeah, I agree. But all right. Any final thoughts? This has been going along, so we should definitely wrap it up here.
No, we can save this for a different time.
All right. So, appreciate you showing up. This is Kickback Anime Discussions Top 10 Favorite Fairy Tale Characters. A series that gets a lot of shit, but honestly was a very good series. There's a reason why, not like everybody, keep in mind how many series is able to finish from beginning to end. Only good series are able to do that. Like, look through all the, especially long running shonen, like there's Fairy Tail, Naruto, One Piece is gonna do it. I'm trying to think if there's any My Hero, maybe. I don't know if My Hero will do it, but Bleach didn't do it actually. So you got to give credit where credit is due. Anything last words, Rax?
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, like, whenever you post them online, if you tweet them out, yeah, give me the tweet, I'll retweet them for you.
All right, sounds good. So this has been your boy RTL Faith. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.